Welcome back to the Making International Law in Korea video series. In this video, I'll be explaining one of the topics of the colonization and decolonization in Korea, which is the Second Korea-Japan Treaty of 1905. Another term is a Korea-Japan Protectorate Treaty. Japan, after its victory in the Russo-Japanese War, began to work on making Korea a protectorate of Imperial Japan. On the issue of securing protection of Korea, which is drafted on April 1905, it was decided that Korea's diplomatic affairs were taken over by Japan, thereby depriving Korea of its right to sign a treaty with foreign countries, and that a deputy secretary in Korea was designated to supervise the administration as well as they protect the Japanese residents in Korea. Soon after, Japan exchanged Taft-Katsura Agreement with the United States in July 1905 and signed the Second Anglo-Japanese Alliance with the United Kingdom in August to win support for making Korea a protectorate. In September, Japan also signed the posthumous treaty with Russia, which approved the protection of Korea. After setting the stage, Japan announced its decision on the implementation of Korea's status as a protectorate on October 27 and drafted a corresponding treaty. Ito Hirobumi, then special envoy, arrived in Seoul on November 9 and went to the royal courts the next day on the 10th to meet Emperor Gojong and delivered personal letter from the Japanese emperor. During the meeting with Gojong on November 15, Ito Hirobumi demanded approval of the issuance of the treaty, calling for the abolition of Korea's external affairs and the delegation of diplomatic rights to Japan. Gojong insisted on receiving counsel from government officials and other ministers since the matter was of great importance for Korea. But this request was countered as it would only mean resistance against Japan. On the afternoon of November 16, Ito Hirobumi called in the Korean officials and demanded that they agree to the terms of the treaty. On November 17, Japanese Minister Hayashi Konosuke called his deputies to the Japanese legation and demanded that the treaty be signed. Thus, the deputy decided to make the decisions through a conference before the war. The meeting, which began at around 4 in the afternoon on the same day, continued inconclusively until 7 in the evening, and Ito accompanied the military police to the place where the conference was being held and asked whether they would sign the treaty. Prime Minister Han Kyu-sol opposed the treaty, but he was taken away by Japanese military police, and the rest of the Korean ministers, Education Minister Lee Wan-yong, Interior Minister Lee Ji-yong, Minister of Foreign Affairs Park Jae-sun, Defense Minister Lee Geun-taek, and Minister of Agriculture, Commerce and Industry Kwon Jung-hyun expressed their approval. In this regard, Ito unilaterally declared that the treaty was passed by the majority votes and concluded the treaty. The Second Korea-Japan Treaty, also known as the Ulsa Treaty, was published as the Korea-Japan Treaty in the Government Gazette. Article 1 of the treaty enabled the Japanese government to supervise and direct Korea's foreign affairs and relations under the control of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs in Tokyo. Under Article 2, Japan took full responsibility for the implementation of existing treaties between Korea and other countries, and Korea was barred from making any treaties and commitments with other countries without going through the Japan's mediation. Furthermore, Article 3 stipulates that Japan was to place one supervisor under the Korean Emperor to preside over diplomatic affairs in Seoul. As a result, Korea's diplomatic rights were completely transferred to Japan, and Korea became a protectorate under the supervision of the Japanese appointed official. Let me move to the Japan-Korea Annexation Treaty. On July 6, 1909, the Japanese government decided on the matters on the annexation of Korea. The plan was to carry out the incorporation of Korea and to eventually diminish its capacity until the appropriate time. When Ito Hirobumi was assassinated in October 1909, Japan decided to move up the schedule for the annexation. Also, the Nationwide for Japan's organization in Korea, Il진회, submitted the voluntary petition for annexation. In April 1910, Japan secured Russia's recognition for the annexation of Korea. In May, it obtained approval from UK. On May 30, Masadake Terauchi, the Deputy Minister of the Army, was appointed as Resident General in Korea, and soon after, a decision was moved to take corrective measures for Korea after the annexation on June 3. Accordingly, Joseon, then Korea, would be governed under the royal prerogative of Japan's emperor, and the Governor General would be under direct supervision of the emperor and authorized to issue laws. After the incorporation was completed, Terauchi became the Resident General in Korea to July 23rd. In August 16, he summoned Lee Hwan-yong instead of the Prime Minister to the residence and delivered annexation treaty. On August 22nd, Emperor Sunjong of the Empire announced the decree that Korea would transfer its sovereignty to the Japanese emperor and appointed Lee Hwan-yong as a member of a plenipotentiary committee to sign the annexation treaty. The annexation treaty was signed thereupon between Lee Hwan-yong and Terauchi later that day and was proclaimed on August 29. The sovereignty of the Korean Empire was transferred to Japan. Pursuant to Article 1, Korean Emperor handed over sovereignty of Korea to Japanese Emperor in a complete and permanent manner. Thus, Japanese Emperor accepted the concession under Article 2 and agreed to incorporate Korea completely into the Japanese Empire. As a result, Korean Empire became extinct by being merged into Japan. Articles 3 through 5 stipulate the cuttings of certain Koreans after annexation, such as the emperor and the crown prince and empress, the queen, the royal family for their meritorious service. It guaranteed the future of the individuals involved and supporters of the annexation treaty. In Article 6, Japan decided to provide sufficient protection for the liberty and property of Koreans. However, this was on the promise of the accepting Japanese rule. The Koreans who denied colonial rule and did not cooperate with the Japanese ruling policy were placed under harsh Japanese oppression.